Welcome to Fortress of Faith with Tom Wallace, calling North America to repentance and revival.
Welcome back once again to the Corner of Truth and Courage, a program where we tackle some of the most difficult topics that are out there. We speak the truth with love. We're not trying to be caustic, and the Bible says, let your speech be seasoned with salt. We don't dump the whole case of salt on people. We season it with salt so it's palatable. And so on this program, you're going to hear us tackle some of the difficult issues, but it will be handled in a reasonable way. We're going to give you facts. We're going to give you the information out there to help you realize, as Christians, our faith, our standards of right and wrong, of God's righteousness in our country here in the West, are being assaulted by different ideological movements. And I've been calling this the trends that are killing America, toxic trends, a downward cycle, a downgrade that is going on. And we've been talking about some of the divisions and some of the issues over the last few weeks. Today and over the next few days, I want to talk about the indoctrination of our children by people who are very much opposed to the traditional Christian values that this nation was built upon. They're going after our children. Now, I'm not against public schools. My son was a public school teacher. And I think that we need good teachers in our public schools, but it's difficult. There's an agenda there. And if you're going to be successful as a school teacher, I'm afraid you're going to have to be forced to make compromises. And so it's very difficult. And you need to realize that there's an ideological indoctrination going on. And our children cannot think. They don't have the capability to think things through. They're very impressionable. The neuroscience is out there in a report that was written in the Journal of Neuroscience. Science. They use MRI scans, and this is I'm reading from the Guardian newspaper. It's about 10 years old, this article, but nevertheless, the science is there. Scans reveal that an unexpected level of activity in the prefrontal cortex, a large section at the front of the brain involved in decision-making and multitasking, this indicated that the brain was working less effectively than that of an adult. So when they do these scans on adolescents, on teenagers, young adults, they're not quite adults yet, they can't think as well. Jane Blakemore, who led the study, said that the brain is actually, the frontal cortex area, the prefrontal cortex, is still being developed even into the late 20s and early 30s. Dr. Arias said this, who's from the University of College London Institute of Cognitive Neuroscience, so that adolescents simply don't have the same mental capacities as an adult. And we know that. I mean, it's quite obvious. Children don't have the life experiences to make wise decisions. And so they're very vulnerable. And when they hear it from adults, they're trusting. They're a bit gullible at times and don't think things through. But you need to understand what some of these educators think about parents. And they don't want you involved. They want your children to indoctrinate them, and they don't want your hands on these kids. They think you're dangerous. Dr. Elizabeth Bartlett, from a Harvard professor, and this is from Harvard Magazine, 2020, in the year 2020, in the May edition. She said, "Do we think that parents should have 24/7 essential authoritarian control over their children from ages 0 to 18? I think it's dangerous. I think it is always dangerous to put powerful people, that's parents, in charge of the powerless, that's your kids, and to give the powerful ones total authority." Let me read that again. This is Dr. Elizabeth Bartlett, an educator at one of the highest institutes here in America, a Harvard professor, saying, I think it's dangerous. I think it's always dangerous to put powerful people, that is parents, in charge of the powerless, their children, and to give the powerful ones total authority. She doesn't think that parents should have 24/7 control over their children from the ages of 0 to 18. Others, oh, come on, I'm missing something. Let me go down here because I know I've got it down here. Paul Blanchard, an attorney, editor of The Nation, that's about parents and children, says, I think the most important factor moving us toward the secular society has been the education factor. Our schools may not teach Johnny to read properly, but that the fact that Johnny is in school till he's 18 tends to lead to the elimination of religious superstition. We may not be able to teach your kids how to read, but one thing we're going to do well is we're going to eliminate him from this religious superstition. You see, the left out there has a very strong desire to keep parents away from the education of their kids. They hate homeschooling. And they don't want parents, and they were afraid of kids having to be taught at home what parents might find out. And this was the big buzz on the internet back in August of 2020. In fact, school districts were asking parents to sign agreements saying that they will not monitor these online classes, the Twitter feed and chat feeds. Here's what some teachers were saying. Be careful because parents may hear what we're teaching their children. Another said, while conversations about race are my wheelhouse and remain a concern in these no-walls environment, I'm most intrigued by the damage that helicopter snowplow parents can do in honest conversations about gender and sexuality. Another one said this, and while conservative parents are my chief concern, I know that the damage can come from the left too. If we are engaged in the messy work of destabilizing, get this, of destabilizing a kid's racism or homophobia or transphobia, we want their classmates' parents piling on. We don't want them involved in this stuff. We don't want them hearing what we're dealing with, what we're going to be talking about. To destabilize kids' views on racism or or homosexuality or transsexual, transgender and all that type of stuff. We don't want parents to hear what we're talking to their kids about. You need to understand, if you haven't come to understand this yet, wake up. We're under a revolution, a cultural revolution out there. And they want to change America from its Christian foundations and to take it into new horizons that actually are not new. Other nations have tried these theories, tried these ideologies, and they failed. But they think that because they're going to operate it here, it's going to be successful. And they have introduced into our school system, now about a decade ago, the Common Core agenda. And it's a federal program that goes from K to all the way through high school, K through 12. Who are the people behind it? Who are the makers and the shapers of this? One is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. This is the bank. This is the funding. The other was the Obama administration and all their people in their philosophies and the ideologies that they think that America needs to move to under the Obama administration is where it got launched. And the National Governors Association was involved in this as well, which spread the Common Core curriculum through our schools throughout the United States. Now, only a few states pushed back. We had Texas. They never received it. Never accepted it. Indiana took it, but because of two moms saying, this is terrible, this is not good for our children, not good for our state, they caused an uproar, a grassroots movement, and that's here to tell you today, folks, that you can make a difference. If you stand up and put your foot down and educate your friends and neighbors about what's wrong, and that's what we try to do here on this program here at Fortress of Faith, is bring to Christians the alarming issues that are going on here in North America so that we can be forewarned and forearmed, but also, as we say, meet us at the corner of truth and courage. We don't want just to inform you about the truth. We want you to take a stand, to have the courage to speak up and to make a difference. You can do that. And two moms did that in Indiana, and they got the Common Core stopped in that state. Now, I believe another 10 states have pushed back now and said, we're not putting our children through this nonsense anymore. Well, here's how it got kicked off back in 2009, October 2009, a 3-day conference, which was designed by or sponsored by the Renaissance Group in Washington, D.C., brought in 3 headline speakers to talk to the educators and the movers and shakers of the educational world here in the United States. The first speaker was the Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan. Of course, this is under the Obama administration. The second speaker was the Undersecretary of Education, Martha Cantor. Of course, it's obvious they're going to have these main leaders. But the third speaker, you'll be surprised, was Bill Ayers. Bill Ayers. Do you know who he is? You need to realize that back in the 70s, we had a domestic terrorist group going on. The leader of that, it was called the Weather Underground. The leader of that was Bill Ayers. From 1970 to 1972, he and his organization bombed the New York City headquarters, the U.S. Capitol building, and the Pentagon. You talk about domestic terrorism going to the top. Bill Ayers was one of the people. Of course, he served time, but when he came out, he reinvented himself like many others. They started putting on suits, and some of them went into the educational world, and that's where Bill Ayers went. And he's become a university professor for a number of years. Technically, he's now retired, but the influence, he's one of the influencers of the Common Core curriculum. I want you to realize the Common Core curriculum is not really about improving the education of our kids. It's more about indoctrinating our kids into thinking and adopting values that are different from what America has been standing upon. Instead of making us proud of our nation, instead makes them feel that they're ashamed of this nation and of its history and want it destroyed from what it was to make it into something totally different. And in the next few days, we're going to be talking a little bit more about this Common Core curriculum and the indoctrination that's going on and the class warfare that's being unleashed and the race warfare that's being unleashed and the ideologies that are being promoted. And you need to be aware of it. And we need to be careful about what our kids are being exposed to. And I hope that you will take action on these things as we cover them. Well, thank you for joining us. We'll be back again tomorrow at the corner of truth and courage. God bless you.